Welcome to the Hope Natural Health Podcast. I'm Dr. Erin Ellis, your host. On this show, we discuss all things health, hormones, and happiness with a little side of this thing called life. Did you know that there are various estrogens in our body? The two that I believe are the most important and always tested on every single one of my patients is estrone and estradiol. Both of these estrogens really do play a crucial role in regulating our menstrual cycles, fertility, and overall well-being. So estrone, or E1, as we like to abbreviate it, is the primary estrogen produced by our ovaries, adrenal glands, and even our fat tissue after menopause. But this does not mean that you can't have estrone while you're menstruating. Why? Because we can convert some estradiol into estrone. Estradiol, or E2, is the most potent and biologically active form of estrogen, which is essential for reproductive function. So this one is the most high when we are menstruating because it's produced primarily by the ovaries. So our main goal when I see these two lab levels on our lab work is to have our estrone less than estradiol. Estrone is also what I like to call an inflammatory estrogen. By that, I mean that it has various metabolites, and metabolites are what's excreted through our urine. So we can test our metabolites through urine tests for hormones like the Dutch test or the HUMAP test, or you can even do this on conventional lab work, but most commonly it's done on one of those urine tests for hormones. But the metabolites there's three common ones, and 2 out of the 3 of these are more prone to being a risk for cancer and other disease processes. So we want to really make sure that we're preferring the safe, protective route of the estrone metabolism, and why I always like to see it as less as possible. And also, if we're doing any sort of hormone replacement therapy, say in menopause, we always do in hormone replacement therapy estradiol with some estriol, which is E3, and we don't really ever replace estrone because of that inflammatory process. However, we're monitoring these levels still on lab work to make sure that we're not converting there because it is, the main inflammatory estrogen. So it's important to test both of these because it can be an indicator of some underlying health issues. For example, like the high estrone relative to estradiol may signal excess estrogen dominance, which is linked to symptoms that can be due to high estrogen to progesterone ratio, like maybe breast tenderness, water retention, we're having some weight gain, we're having acne or skin breakouts, our moods are all over the place, maybe we're having some brain fog, our periods are irregular, breakthrough bleeding, spotting, irritability, headaches. These are all signs that we might have an unbalanced or higher estrogen than progesterone ratio, or that estrogen dominance. So this higher estrogen can be linked to some other conditions like fibroids, heavy bleeding, endometriosis, those pesky menstrual migraines or headaches, horrible PMS, even some breast or gynecological cancers, lupus, or some other autoimmune conditions. So it's super important to test both of these levels. And I commonly only see maybe like a total estrogen, which will say how much estrogen we have total in the body, but it doesn't break it down into the different forms of estrogen like we just discussed. So that's why I run them separately to see our overall abundance of estrogen in the body. So oftentimes, most women have a lot of the estrogen in comparison to progesterone, which is a contributor to a lot of their symptoms. And I always am like, why is this happening? And I think a lot of it nowadays is due to our environment and how toxic it is, because a lot of pesticides, chemicals, plastics, etc., are all what we like to call endocrine disruptors or xenoestrogens, like estrogens outside the body or things that mimic our estrogen in our body. So if we don't have the tools in place to really help bind our estrogen or help metabolize and excrete the estrogen, it just becomes more and more accumulated in the body, which can therefore elicit a lot of these symptoms and PMS conditions or menstrual irregularities, even infertility, things like that. So what can you do about it? Well, one, checking your environment. We talked a couple podcasts ago with a guest in the Yuka app, and you know that I talk about the Yuka app all the time. I love it to see like how clean this product is for me. You can use Think Dirty or Think Dirty app or the EWG.org are also some really good resources to see, if the product that you're using or the food or whatever is contributing to, maybe possibly estrogen excess. Making sure that you choose antibiotic or hormone-free foods, especially with meats, because a lot of meat or conventional meat is pumped with a lot of hormones that can mimic, excess estrogen in the body. Also making sure that we get adequate fiber. I talk about fiber a lot, but it's so important, and fiber helps bind excess estrogen and clears it from the body. So fiber, as far as like beans and avocados are a good source of fiber, some nuts, some seeds, veggies, lots of veggies. Then you can get good adequate fiber to help bind to the excess estrogen and clear it out of the body. We also want to make sure that our liver is up to par. Castor oil packs are a really good way to help our liver metabolize and detox. You can do various supplementation, glutathione, making sure that we're pooping, peeing, and sweating will help our detox pathways as well. Also, our gut. We metabolize a lot of our hormones in our gut. So this is one of the foundations of health, along with the liver, is making sure that our gut is healthy. Do we have a good gut microbiome? Do we have a leaky gut? How are our bowel movements? Are we pooping every day? Again, that goes back to like fiber and nutrients and all of those things. And then, of course, testing, like monitoring these hormones through simple blood tests, even salivary or urine tests, could really provide us some insightful information into our hormone health. So I get a lot of questions about estrogen and why do we have so much estrogen and why do I always see high estrogen levels on labs? And those are some reasons why, but I wanted to dive more into, what is the different forms of estrogen and why it's important to make sure that you get tested for both. So curious, let me know if you've had either one of these tests tested. Again, they can be specific to where you are in your menstrual cycle. I always typically test on cycle day 19, 20, 21 if a menstruating woman, because I'm really looking at that estrogen progesterone ratio. But also if you don't have, a time or your labs weren't timed with your menstrual cycle, you can always go back and say, all right, I was in cycle day 14. Well, estrogen and testosterone spike and get higher right around ovulation. So if you already have too much estrogen to begin with, this is another sign that we've got to help clear some of the estrogen from the body, because you might have some symptoms around ovulation that you're not super fond of. So again, super important to get them tested. I do them in office. You can find the Hope for Hormones protocol or package on my website as well. That can do the testing for you. But I wanted to share that information with you today and encourage you to get your estrogens tested. That's a wrap, and I'll see you again next week.